Hey everybody, this is Dream. We have a 10-game slate, pretty big slate today on DraftKings and FanDuel. So in this video, I will go through the injury report, then I'll get in DraftKings, then FanDuel, and then I'll do my top picks, my picks for the wins, team wins. So with that said, let's get into the injury report. For the Warriors, Klay Thompson is going to be out, and Wiggins is out. For the Hawks, Murray and Collins are both out, and Young is questionable. For the Magic, Carter Jr., Suggs, Harris, and Okeke are out. For the Pistons, Cunningham is out. For the Hornets, Ball, Hayward, and Smith Jr. are out. For the Knicks, Brunson is questionable, and Toppin is out. For the Raptors, Achua, Porter, and OG Anunoby is out. For the Heat, Hero is probable, Oladipo is probable, Deadman is questionable, Butler, Vincent, Jovic, and Kane are all out. For the Thunder, Robinson, Earl, and Williams are out. For the Spurs, Collins is doubtful, Podol is out, and Richardson is questionable. For the Wizards, Porzingis, Beal, and Morris are all questionable. That injury situation could really cause some chaos. And then Wright is out, and Hachimura is out. For the Nuggets, Porter Jr. is out. For the Wolves, Russell is questionable, and Towns is out. And for the Clippers, Powell is out. Now, we have two teams basically that have a lot of, well, actually three that have a lot of question at this point, which are the Wizards, the Heat, and the Hawks with Young, and also, well, actually, and the Warriors too, because sometimes they end up sitting half the team. So we'll have to keep those things in order and check on those things closer to time. You can check out the check out our Discord. Link is in the description below if you want to check out and see if there's any. We have an injury report that updates in there automatically in real time, so you can definitely get in there and check that out. So let's go ahead and take a look here at DraftKings. So we're going to start with our core plays. We have three here, Tyler Hero being one of them. Now, Tyler Hero has been playing pretty well lately. His price point has popped up some, but with Butler out and a couple other guys potentially out, he's going to have some upside here in this matchup. Trent Jr., he's also in a great spot here. His price is a little bit too cheap, even though it's popped up some for what his potential is in this game with the injuries to the Raptors. And then Bogdanovich for Atlanta, he's just too cheap for what his potential here is. The last two games, he's in the mid-40s. He isn't playing every game, but assuming that he ends up playing a full complement of minutes today, he should be good to go, and is just way too cheap on this price point. So there's a couple other guys that just barely missed the cut simply because of couldn't just use everybody. So let's go ahead and get into it here. So we have Tyrese Halliburton for Indiana. Now, he had a really bad game the last game. I look for him to bounce back, though. He's been good all season long, and I don't see any reason why he wouldn't bounce back in a much faster-paced game, especially if the Warriors have some guys out, which they already have two guys out from their starting lineup. He should be good to go here, and his price points come down a little bit. Then we'll look at Terry Rozier for the Charlotte Hornets. He's in a good matchup here. He has some upside. He's been playing really well, and with all the injuries to the team, he definitely has 50 fantasy point upside in this matchup against Detroit. And then we'll look at Zach LaVine here for the Bulls. He's been inconsistent lately. He has had two bad games in a row, but I do expect him to bounce back here against the Knicks and have a really solid outing. As you can see, his price point is pretty fair for what his potential is. So then we'll get to PJ Washington for the Hornets. He's been very inconsistent this season, very up and down. He has big games and little games. But the reason he's interesting is because he has nice upside and plus matchups, and this is definitely one of them. He's going to get plenty of shot opportunities. It's a matter of hitting them and then getting some peripheral stats, which he does a lot of times. So he'll either get 20 fantasy points or he'll get like 40 something, and hopefully we can get a 40-point game out of him today. It's a good matchup for him to do so. Then we'll look at Alec Pokusevski for Oklahoma City. Now, this is a tough matchup against Miami. It seems like most teams have trouble against Miami, but he is in a good spot here. With the injuries to the Thunder, he should get a starting position again, but we're going to have to make sure that that's the case so that he gets a full complement of minutes. But he has big-time upside if he does end up getting that starting position, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. And then we'll look at Pat Williams here for the Bulls. Against the Knicks, he should have some good opportunity. He's been really solid as a starter. He's playing around 30 minutes a game, and he does have a couple off games occasionally, but he's been a guy you can plug in if you just need a $4,000 player to not destroy your opportunity. So he looks pretty decent today. And then Kelly Oubre Jr. He was almost in my locks of the day, but he has some nice upside at this price point. But his price has come up some as a result of his play lately. But with all the injuries to the Hornets, he's getting lots of minutes and he's playing really well. Even though he is a streaky player, we do have to remember that. Mitchell Robinson looks really solid today for the Knicks. He's been pretty solid since coming back from his injuries. He's had some big games and he has some big game upside in this matchup, so he's definitely viable on the slate. We're also going to take a look at Bam Adebayo, who, with the injuries and guys sitting out for Miami today, he should have some more upside, but keep in mind he's been pretty inconsistent this season, but his price point has popped up a little bit, so do keep that in mind, but he's got a nice plus matchup here. Also going to mention Miles Turner. This is an interesting matchup for him because I do feel like it's a little bit risky because he is very inconsistent as a player, but his price point is pretty fair and he has big time upside in this matchup. We're also going to look at Clint Capella for the Hawks. Now, he is in an interesting spot. He's been playing really well with the injuries to the Hawks. However, his price point has popped up a lot, so he doesn't make him an auto lock. Then we'll look at Mason Plumlee for the Hornets finally at $6,100. He's been eclipsing this a bunch lately. He's had a couple off games, but for the most part he is, and his minutes are pretty stable. So, I mentioned several centers. I don't usually like to mention that many, but they're all kind of in the same boat. They're all in nice matchups, and they don't have they all have potential for big time upside, but they're all inconsistent. So, that said, let's get into FanDuel. I've got three guys in my list here for FanDuel. First being Jordan Poole. Now, I didn't mention him on FanDuel, on DraftKings, because his price is much higher there. But here on FanDuel, he's interesting. With the injuries to the Warriors, he's going to start. And if a couple other guys are even out, then that would even give him a bigger boost. But he's got really nice upside at this price point here on FanDuel, with both Wiggins and Klay Thompson not playing today. Then we'll look at Gary Trent Jr., who is just too cheap for his potential in this game, especially with Anunoby out and a couple other guys out. So I look for him to continue to play well, as he has in some of these games when there's a lot of injuries. And then we're going to look at Tyler Hero, who is a little bit cheaper here on FanDuel than DraftKings, and he has nice upside with all the injuries to the Heat and guys sitting out. So we'll have to wait and see, if anybody else is ruled out or even him. But I expect him to play today, and so that's what I've got. So at point guard, though, we're going to look at Steph Curry as well. Assuming he ends up playing. Now, this is risky because he may not end up playing, but because sometimes they sit everybody out on back-to-backs. And so if he does play, though, he is viable on the slate. However, he hasn't been ideal this season. He's been inconsistent when it comes to his pricing and stuff like that. And while he is under $10,000, he hasn't hit 50 fantasy points but once in the last 10 or so games. So, but he does have big time upside when he does, and this is a fast-paced game. The Indiana is one of the faster-paced teams and one of the worst defensive teams, along with the Warriors. So I do think both teams have some good opportunity here. Same with, and of course, the same reasoning is the reason why I have Tyrese Halliburton here as well. His price point is pretty solid here on FanDuel for what his potential is, and he's been playing pretty well with the exception of his last game where he just went 0 for 9 from the floor. But he should be able to bounce back in this plus matchup. That game was against Miami, which is a tougher team, and so I expect him to bounce back here. Then we'll look at Terry Rozier. He's another guy I like a lot here for Hornets today. He's been playing really well lately with the injuries to their team. Now, obviously, his price point has popped up, so he's not super ideal, but he is viable on the slate nonetheless. Then I'm going to look at Jonathan Kuminga for the Warriors. He's played pretty solid lately, especially with the injuries to the team. And with a couple guys out today, he's going to get more run. And I think he's a pretty safe floor on this particular slate because of those injuries. Typically, he doesn't play as many minutes, and he can have some really low-scoring games. But I think he's got a pretty good opportunity here in this matchup to do well. Draymond Green is kind of interesting today. I don't love him, but he is $6,000, and he does have big time upside occasionally. The last few games he's been pretty lackluster. So we'll have to wait and see if he ends up playing even. But he is somebody to take into consideration today. Then we'll look at PJ Washington, who has a nice matchup here. He's very streaky and inconsistent, but he has upside in this matchup, and so that's why I have him here. And then Sabonis for the Kings. He's actually been playing pretty well lately, and he's in a decent matchup here against Toronto. He has big time upside, but he hasn't been hitting it all that much lately. But I do look for this game as a possible opportunity for him to do so. At center, I have Clint Capella for the Hawks. He's pretty safe today at this price point. He's been playing pretty solid lately, and his price is a little bit too cheap here on on FanDuel versus DraftKings, where he's a little bit more expensive. Same goes for Mitchell Robinson. He's a little bit too cheap for what he can do, but he is a little bit inconsistent, and the Knicks are kind of all over the place when it comes to scoring and minutes and stuff like that. And then finally, and last but not least, Mason Plumlee. He's just been playing really solid lately. He's been getting over 30 fantasy points in most games. He does have a couple off games, but overall he's been playing well, and I look for that to continue, especially if we can get a double-double, then he would definitely pay off here. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. Oh, let me get into my game picks. Sorry about that, guys. First of all, we've got Indiana over Golden State. We have Orlando over the Atlanta Hawks. We have the Hornets over the Pistons. We have the Bulls over the Knicks. We have the Kings over Toronto. We have the Heat over the Thunder. We have the Blazers over the Spurs. The Mavs over the Cavs. The Nuggets over the Wizards. And the Clippers over the Wolves. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And have a nice day, guys.